Justina Miles also signed the lyrics of Rihanna's halftime show and was the first deaf woman to perform at a Super Bowl halftime show. Her lively performance went viral, and many people have raved about her performance ever since then. And another fun fact, since her performance went viral, searches for how to learn sign language have skyrocketed. Specifically, searches for sign language courses increased by 857%. Welcome to Inclusion and Marketing, the show that's all about helping you uncover the skills and insights you need to win the attention, adoration, and loyalty of more consumers, especially those with differences that are often ignored by brands. I'm your host, Sonia Thompson, an inclusive brand strategist, coach, and someone with a lot of differences. Let's get to it. I recently listened to a new podcast I heard about, and then I immediately listened to the next episode. Ben Shapiro, host of the MarTech podcast, had me hooked. The show is made up of interviews with marketers who use technology to generate growth and achieve success. And let's face it, aren't just about all of us using technology to do that these days? Because Ben talks to a broad range of guests, you're sure to find a show that covers a type of marketing technology that could really make a difference within your business, such as digital assistants, email marketing, or even dynamic live. As a result, you might find yourself doing a little binge of this show the same way I did. Listen to MarTech wherever you get your podcasts. Over the past few years, more and more brands have started to lean harder into more inclusive marketing campaigns. As we look at Super Bowl campaigns for 2021 and 2022, inclusion played a much more prominent role. That was not the case for Super Bowl LVII. The celebrity-filled ads seem to have different goals. Even though it feels like an increasing number of brands are growing cold with their commitments towards diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, especially as we move further and further away from 2020, the good news is that progress is still being made by those who are committed to the effort. While it didn't feel that inclusion was actively considered as part of the majority of the ad campaigns at the Super Bowl, there were still major wins in inclusion throughout the event that are worth calling out, as well as one ad in particular, specifically from the NFL, that was noteworthy from an inclusion standpoint that's worth calling out. Here's the first win from an inclusion standpoint at this year's Super Bowl. All women aviators for the pre-game flyover. Now, even though women have been flying for decades, the images that we mostly see around pilots are of men. That's why it was super lovely to see not just a token woman among the crew of aviators who were doing the pre-game flyover for this year's Super Bowl, but an entire crew of women. Now, as more brands start to infuse more representation in the visual imagery they put forth, it's important to not just stop at adding one or two faces of people from underrepresented and underserved communities. Take the opportunity to change the narrative with the visual imagery that your brand is putting forth. Present alternate ways of being, thriving, and operating that enable more people to see themselves or who they aspire to be represented, not just as supporting characters, but as lead characters as well. Another win for inclusion from this year's Super Bowl was Rihanna performing while visibly pregnant. Shortly after Rihanna headlined the Super Bowl performance, her representative confirmed what millions of people had been speculating about during the entire halftime show. Rihanna is pregnant with her second child, becoming the first person to headline a Super Bowl halftime show while pregnant. Pregnancy is physically demanding on the body. One study found that being pregnant is like running a 40-week marathon, noting that pregnant women reach the same peak levels as ultra-endurance athletes. Herman Poncer, co-author of the 2019 study, noted that pregnancy is the most energetically expensive activity the human body can maintain for 9 months. The significance in representation for people who have been, who are, or who desire to be pregnant was glaring. Another barrier broken to signify that pregnant people do belong in professional settings, and they don't need to put their careers or other opportunities on hold if they don't want to. They can safely perform at the highest levels and on the biggest stages while nurturing life inside of them if they so choose. The beauty of Rihanna's performance is that it didn't try to hide or ignore the fact that she was pregnant. It was designed in a way to enable her to thrive given her current state, even if that is different from what viewers are long accustomed to seeing. So while the performance broke barriers, it also charted a new path for what success can look like. The other day, I watched a frustrating customer experience unfold. Jonathan, my husband, was calling the cell phone company. He pressed the button to talk to someone in Spanish, and the phone system then switched over to Spanish, which it should have, only to have a live person come on the line in English. Ugh. Whenever you can, it is good practice to avoid friction in the customer journey. It really helps in delivering experiences that make more of your customers, including those who are often underrepresented and underserved, feel like they belong. Sometimes doing that is easier said than done. But with HubSpot, it actually is easy. That's why more companies are choosing HubSpot CRM, a platform that brings your marketing, sales, and service teams together all in one place. It seamlessly connects your teams. Sales, marketing, customer service, and ops have a complete view of the customer journey. With real-time data at their fingertips, your teams won't trip over each other, and you'll be equipped to deliver better customer experiences, which leads to more customers. Ditch the friction in your customer experience. Learn how HubSpot CRM can help your business grow better at HubSpot.com. Another win for inclusion at this year's Super Bowl were the deaf performers at the pregame show and at halftime. Songs performed at the pregame show included Lift Every Voice and Sing, also known as the Black National Anthem, America the Beautiful, and of course, the Star Spangled Banner. And each featured noteworthy singers accompanied by Colin Denny, Troy Kotzer, and Justina Miles, who signed the lyrics of the songs in the background. Traditionally, when sign language is used in these settings, it is American Sign Language, also known as ASL. As Colin Denny signed Babyface's rendition of America the Beautiful, he used a combination of both ASL and North American Indian Sign Language. Colin Denny noted that his presence during the performances would not only help others like him feel represented and less alone, but bring awareness to the existence of North American Indian Sign Language. He says, a lot of people aren't aware of the language and that it has always been here, even if we don't see it. That's something that I feel needs national recognition and revitalization for the community. Justina Miles also signed the lyrics of Rihanna's halftime show and was the first deaf woman to perform at a Super Bowl halftime show. Her lively performance went viral and many people have raved about her performance ever since then. And another fun fact, since her performance went viral, searches for how to learn sign language have skyrocketed. Specifically, searches for sign language courses increased by 857%. And one other notable win for inclusion at the 2023 Super Bowl was the NFL featuring women and Spanish language in one of their ads. As I mentioned, there was one ad that stood out heads above others from an inclusion standpoint at this year's Super Bowl. It was the NFL's Run With It ad featuring flag football star Diana Flores. I consider this ad a win for authentic inclusion for a number of reasons. First up, and perhaps the most obvious one, was that it centered a woman in a traditionally male-dominated sport. Flores, a flag football quarterback, led her Mexico women's national flag football team to a gold medal in the 2022 World Games. The spot also very naturally incorporated Spanish language into it. During a brief section in which Diana is engaging with her mother, who is trying to take her flags. Now, the U.S. is home to the second largest population of Spanish speakers in the world, second only to Mexico. Reports show that 13% of the U.S. population speaks Spanish at home. My household is part of that 13%. Data shows that by the year 2050, 1 in 3 people in the U.S. will speak Spanish. With the rise of Spanish speakers in the U.S., more brands are working to engage these consumers by incorporating Spanish language into their promotions. Now, at times that has come off a bit cumbersome, especially when brands work to incorporate both English and Spanish into the same campaigns. The objective isn't wrong, it's just the execution often feels clunky. The NFL, however, did it flawlessly. Part of the reason is because Diana is Mexican, it made perfect sense as a part of her storyline to include Spanish. That's a tip for brands working to incorporate Spanish language into your promotions. Feature talent with a depth of a backstory, which will make it easy for you to incorporate cultural elements that feel natural and authentic rather than a marketing tactic. Use these bright spots of inclusion from this year's Super Bowl as inspiration for how you can be more inclusive with your campaigns so you can make more of the people you serve feel like they belong with you. That's it for today's episode. Please do share it with a friend so we can get more people on board practicing inclusion. And if you'd like even more tips on how to build an inclusive brand, head on over to inclusivemarketing.co and get signed up for the Inclusion and Marketing newsletter, where every week you'll get the latest news and more in-depth insights on how to attract and retain more consumers, especially those with differences. Until next time, remember, everyone deserves to have a place where they belong. Let's use our individual and collective power to ensure more people feel like they do. Thanks so much for watching. Talk to you soon.